This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day, everybody. Well, here it is, the conversation you've all been waiting for. A chat with Sarah Jezebel Diva. She has been the most requested guest by a considerable margin, owing to her pivotal role in the world of Cradle of Filth. Her vocals on Cruelty and the Beast are not just integral to that album's greatness, they are iconic in their own right. Look, the journey with Sarah, it's been ongoing. At times it seemed as though she might have moved on, much like John, Les and Robin. However, her responses to my messages over the years kept the hope alive that one day she would provide deep insights into her time, not just with Cradle, but the Ryan as well. But the chat goes beyond that. It wasn't my initial intention for these conversations to become a platform for Cradle members to reveal long-held truths concealed for decades. Nevertheless, that's precisely what the Chronicles of Filth have become. They're an opportunity to strip away the layers of stories and narratives, getting to the heart of the matter, or at the very least, setting the record straight and dispelling falsehoods. So I extend a heartfelt thank you to Sarah for agreeing to share a story, and also to my good mate Jamie, or Astanu, formerly of Dimmu Borgir, for his steadfast support and advocacy. And of course to you, the dedicated listener, your commitment to seeking the truth and your appreciation for the profound insights that Sarah and the other Cradle of Filth members have shared, or Sarah's about to share, is sincerely appreciated. All right, are you ready? Here she is, Sarah Jezebel Diva.
Right, so you ask what you want, you go as deep, you do what you want to do. Basically what I'll do is I might turn around to you and say, can you stop recording, just to give me a moment to think about how I want to phrase it, if that makes sense. I'm the kind of person that says it how I see it.
Yeah, you tell the truth. I know that. I've read your Instagram posts.
I try not to lie. And although the things that come out of my mouth and that I write down, there's a lot of emotion attached to that. But you ask what you want, and you just start with whatever stage you want to start at, because not only have I had, obviously, you ask me several times, and I apologise that I haven't taken you up and I might have mucked you about.
No
but
dramas
I've also
whatsoever.
had a lot of fans say to me I should do it. I've also had Jamie and also Astanu and a few others say you really should do it. So you start from whatever era. If you don't want to talk about a specific band, whatever you want to do, it's your show. I just like to try not to be arrested for slander, please. Mind you, it's only slander if it's not true, right? So
correct. You just tell the truth. If you tell the truth, there's no dramas. It's just as you remember things happening, and that's okay. If the details are foggy, then the details are foggy. But
I can guarantee you, without even listening to some of your podcasts, the truth is not told. Or half, because you can't tell the truth. But, we'll see where it goes.
All right, okay. So the thing about Cradle of Filth is that there's no doubt Danny is the brains of the band. No question about that at all. But he isn't the heart and soul. That belongs to a handful of people. Nick, Stu, Les, Paul Lender, and you are one of the integral members that forms the heart and the soul of the outfit. And the reason I say that is because you are all responsible in your own way for setting, and here's the key point, the tone of the band, particularly your voice. Now, I was just speaking to James McElroy the other day, fantastic fellow. And we were talking about you, because you always come up in these conversations, and it's you. And I've got to say, it's almost always, I can't remember anybody saying anything negative, by the way. But James had formed a view which was similar to mine. We agreed on a lot of topics and a lot of points. But that Essex accent that you've got, that full-on English accent that you've got, it set the band apart straight away, very early on at a time when things were just breaking out into the open. And then, of course, Cruelty and the Beast came out and it changed the game pretty much for all black metal bands. But for you, do you agree with what I've said, and what are your dominant feelings when you look back on the whole thing?
So there's a common misconception that I did all the narration. I did not do all of the narration. That was Danielle. And it's really funny because obviously at some point I took on the narration, and live I obviously did the narration. But I remember Danny, I said to Danny, like, obviously, you know, I started very young. I was still in college, actually. So I was about 16 and I met Danny and Paul in a flat, an apartment in Manor Park. And I remember Danny saying, like, at some point, not long after that someone else would be doing the narration. And I was a bit confused why. And he's like, 'cause you're Cockney. And he's like, you know, he was like, I didn't have the accent that I suppose he and others might have been looking for. Obviously, it's an act. You play a part. So if I want to speak like I'm from London, I will. If I want to speak properly, as I say, you play the part and it's an act. So I was a little bit gutted that I never got to do the narration, but that was their view. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So what was the original question? I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, no, I get that. I have questions for you about Andrea and Danielle's role, but I just wanted to make the point because older fans, people like myself, and there's a lot out there because I'm communicating with a lot of people communicating with me, but you were one of the 5 members of the band that are considered the heart and soul of the group, and I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that. Well,
that was never known to me. That was never made clear to me that I was important. So I suppose this is where we go deep into the very, very beginning. You know, the first time I met them as an entire band, I was in Colchester, and obviously I'm not going to mention names, and it is funny, but it wasn't funny at the time. One of the members turned around to me and went, "Yeah, you never know. You might make some money, enough for you to get your bus fare home." Now, as adults, you can laugh about that. But when you're 16 years old and you're in a room full of men that you don't know, it's very intimidating and it's actually very offensive. You know, I was very young, very immature. I'm not saying necessarily in my behaviour, but I knew nothing about the music scene. I was in a punk band at the time. And all I knew is that I wanted to sing. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to sing, and this was a chance for me to sing. I didn't know how I was going to sing. That was up to Danny and whoever to decide how they wanted me to sing. But I can assure you that from day one, I was never made to feel I was part of that group, of a family of any sorts. They were older than me. I can tell you that categorically, Danny was the one that always made me feel welcome. And no one can deny that. He was always respectful. And he was one of the very, very few who actually was kind and respectful. I don't know, that might surprise you to hear, but it's true. It's true. If I go back so many years and I think of all the things that have been said to me by members, there's lots of things that stick out. he's never put me down. He's never made me feel inadequate, really. There's times I've thought, well, why can't I be on your band's T-shirt? And as it's come to light, but eventually I think I had more of a ground to stand on because I'd been part of that music for so long. So I'd at some point I'd decided, I'm just going to turn up and I'm going to be there, and Dan can either tell me to go away or not. But I know that a lot of the direction didn't come from him. I don't know how to word that properly without it being misunderstood. I now believe, with all the decisions had been made over the years that affected me and hurt me, I do not believe Dan was even 90% responsible. I think it came from other areas. And again, that might shock you, that might shock people to hear, because let's face it, all the crap is thrown at one person. Yeah, so when you say I'm an integral part, never, ever have I felt that. It's the fans that made me feel like that, actually, and the bands that approached me whilst being in the band that made me feel worth it and made me feel like I was doing something right. But the way I was spoken to, the way I was treated by some of those band members who, funnily enough, have children now, well, they wouldn't allow their children to be spoken to like that. So
I'm going to play devil's advocate, okay, because I think we need to do this. Are you talking about Stuart and Nick?
I am not going to mention any names, but I will talk further on and I will tell you, if you ask, some of the treatment, but I cannot name names. I know that could be what you would like me to do or what other people would like me to do. I've said a lot over the years and it's all come from the heart. It's all firmly embedded in my head how it should have been and how it was and how it wasn't, So I can answer things. I don't want to name names, but Danny I'll happily mention, because I feel now more than ever he's got the blame for so much, and I don't think that's how it should be. And that might sound like I'm backtracking, but maybe I am. Cool.
No, you're not at all. But he's the sole member, and there's been over. It's you couldn't calculate how many members have come in and out of the fold, but in terms of credited band members, it's well over 30 at this point. I'm talking about credited band members on albums, so guitarists, keyboard players, drummers, this sort of thing. And then, of course, there's all the other musicians that add the special sauce, so to speak. So have you got an opinion on why the band really is the one band that turns over more than anybody else that has an enduring career? And that's the key point.
Okay, so this is my opinion. Doesn't mean it's fact. I think money and greed and jealousy and potentially one person being favoured over others. So let me make myself clear. When you're a lead singer, you are the first one to be attacked. You are the first one who's going to be held accountable for the way everything else is going. Okay? And the lead singer is always at the forefront. They're always going to be the ones that the press are going to want to talk to, that the record companies are going to deal with. I've been out of the loop for a very long time, but I hear everything. I know what's been going on in a lot of areas that I've now come to a point where I don't want to know what's going on, because I've been angry and upset for so long that I don't want to feel like that anymore, especially after, obviously, John Kennedy passing away the other day. And it's just woken me up a little bit. But, okay, everyone's going to have an opinion. You also have to bear in mind that I have never been there when decisions have been made. I've never been contracted. But what I have heard is all the sniping and backstabbing. And with one person in particular that was in the band whilst I was there, I would always say to him, why don't you just get off your ass and say it to his face? Oh, too much trouble, we won't listen. Well, okay, I don't think Danny was the best listener. And I don't mean that in a bad way. There's times me and him had talked, and I think Dan had the attention span of a fish sometimes. But this person would be like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, just go and talk. Just talk. That's all you've got to do. So, yeah, it became a very hateful environment. And if anyone says it wasn't, that's a lie. It was very poisonous. It was very vindictive. The stuff that would get said was never to anyone's face. It would take a lot to say something to someone's face. And towards the end, that's what I started doing. I started speaking up for myself and saying what I thought. And it didn't go down well because nobody likes the truth. So, I can't speak for any member. I really, really can't. But I do know that communication or lack of it plays a big, big part. And I do think there was a lot of jealousy.
Stuart's talked about John White ending him, and you were in the band when both of those guys were present as well. So I know I'm going to be sensitive to it. Don't worry, I'm not going to say you're talking about John or what have you. But did you witness any of that?
What, John, as in John Kennedy?
No, John Pyrus. Yeah,
did I witness anything?
Stuart's on record with this stuff. I'm talking about stuff that's been out now there for 6 or 7 years or so, because that's how long. Yeah.
Again, I can categorically say there was a lot of bullying going on. A hell of a lot of bullying. Putting people down, belittling people, making them feel bad about themselves, ripping them apart. And that came from a few areas. And again, was not Dan. Never was that Dan that I saw.
Okay, what did Dan do, though, to smooth the waters when these things were going on?
I don't know. I can't comment on that. Dan had spoke to me. We had an okay relationship, friendship. I probably thought a lot more of him than what he thought of me. Although, funnily enough, I had been accused of fancying him, which is very funny. It's just me and Dan could talk, but as deep as he would allow it to go, Yeah. I would tell him very personal things, which I don't think he was comfortable hearing, things about my past. So as I say, what would Dan do? I don't know. I would say talk to management. But going back that far, obviously Faye was in at a certain point.
I was going to say, what did Faye do about it then? I mean, she must have known what was going on. Probably
did. My first tour that I did was the Rape and Ruin of Europe. Mm-hmm. And she came out towards the end and she offered to bring me home because of everything that was going on, because of how I was being treated. So she knew. But let's be frank. Actually, don't be frank. Right? There's money involved.
Yeah.
So are you going to turn a blind eye? Are you going to smooth things over, or are you going to get rid of that person? Faye's a manager. I don't know. I can't tell you. People leave, but a lot of people didn't leave. It was more the other way around. People had enough. People walked away. people stuck it out till the end, but a lot of the people in the beginning were bullies. So I don't know if any of this makes sense. So
it does make sense, because I've read your Instagram posts and I've spoken to many of the members, as you're probably aware. But that's why I'm inclined to mention what Greg told me, which is that you're an Amazonian and you were fearless and you could stand on your own 2 feet. So it's not that this is coming as a surprise or what have you, but it's sad to hear.
Who could stand on their own 2 feet?
You
Me?
you were a very capable person.
Well, I've not listened to any of the interviews, but I've listened to some of Nick's, and I found myself agreeing with a lot of what he said. See, me and Nick did clash. Again, I was a young girl. He was older. I was probably seen as a hindrance, you know. He didn't speak to me very well. He really, really didn't. But I also understand Nick, and yeah, I have a lot of good feelings towards Nick, which is very bizarre because I didn't back then. And I do care. I definitely do. And some of the things he did actually helped me grow some balls, if I'm honest. But my treatment was still disgusting from a few people. So Greg, me and Greg rarely talked on tour. We didn't have anything in common. That's not being rude. He's very intelligent. My God, he's very intelligent.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know, I'm not even going to compare. He was too much for me. He's just too intelligent.
He's a Minster, for York Minster. That's where he works at the moment. I mean, he's a curator and he's a holder of knowledge. Yeah. He's
extremely talented, and he is a lovely guy. And it wasn't until he left the band that we had a friendship. I haven't seen him in years now, but did he ever treat me bad? No, we just didn't talk. He didn't really talk to me. If you want to talk about Robin, again, didn't talk much, but he was there for me at some crucial points in my career. Like when I did Covenant, I was told that if I worked for any other band, that I would not work for Cradle of Filth again. And I decided to bite the bullet, and I was afraid, did not want to lose Cradle of Filth, because even though how I'd been treated, it still meant a lot to me, and I was still very young. I phoned Rob up from Germany, and I took your advice and I'm here. And he went, good. He said, you don't let anybody tell you what to do. And I did it. I haven't seen him in years. I was gutted when he left, finally, you know.
But do you know why he left? Because that's what I can't get a definitive answer on.
He had had enough. He left. You got to bear in mind that people are going to listen to this and they're going to go, again, it's my opinion, but I can only go by what he said to me towards the end. And I believe we were in Australia, and it was in the airport, and we were walking down the corridor, and he said, I've had enough, I'm gone. And I'd be the kind of person that would beg someone not to go, you know. I was very gutted when he left. And you know what? He went. I can't remember at what point he went, but I'm sure it was after that Australian-Japan stint that we did. Now, again, I can't sit here and tell you, some of it's memory, but I can't sit here and tell you, you know, why he'd had enough. But I could say it wasn't just about a lead singer. It is about everything else that's going on, management, record companies. It all comes with a load of crap, doesn't it? So that's all I can really say about Rob. But, you know, so other people, you know, obviously we've touched on Stuart.
Can you tell me any more about your relationship with him? Like, did you?
He treated me like something he had stepped in. Okay. If ever there is anybody that I could pick out from the scene that I'd worked with who made me feel like I was the biggest piece of shit they'd stepped in, it was him. Okay. He would put me down. He would, yeah.
Is it a personality clash, or do you think it was just?
No, it was.
Like
no. A lot of the things I've come across when I was younger was you're a girl, you're nothing. Music is for us men. We're the ones writing it. You're just here to tag along. You know, I'd had, and again from very few people, and again I'm going to say, not Dan. He was always respectful of women in my eyes. Okay, he wasn't the type of guy to sit there and go, "Oh, get your tits out." That came from other people. I was treated like, I don't know, like a piece of meat, spoken to like shit, and made to feel like I was way below them.
Did they treat Danielle and Andrew?
No, because Danielle wasn't. No, because Danielle wasn't part of it like I was. There was no relationship there at all, none at all. She would literally just turn up at the studio. She didn't like some things. She didn't like the way certain people were. We'd had lots of conversations about that, and one of them was sexism. It really was. I know that a comment was made to her. Someone came on to her, and because she refused, he said, "What, are you, a fucking lesbian or something?" You know? I remember that, and that's actually one of the last times she worked for them. And again, I will tell you, it's not the person who has all the shit thrown at them, because he was so respectful and he never really felt comfortable about some of the comments that would come out, joking or not, you know. It came from somebody else.
Look, I just want to, the issue with Danny has come from Stuart and Nick. Nick in particular, who wanted himself, Les, and Stuart to leave he looks back in retrospect and thinks that they should have left as a block because there's a financial issue. And I can tell you another member spoke to me about the same thing, but I can't share who that is.
Yeah,
for the
no,
people
that's
listening.
fine.
You will know who that is. But that was about Danny. That's the feedback, and that's a matter of public record there. Okay, so that, just to be clear about what the issue was with Danny from the band members, the ones that you were in the band with, that is the feedback. That is the commentary. It was also, what did Stu say? He said he was a fucking prick with me, but he didn't close the door in 2017 on not having a relationship with him again. But Nick, I got the feeling, was just angry. He's very upset by it all. And I got to know Nick a little bit too, so I got more context after the fact as well. But
there's a lot of anger. There is a lot of anger.
Yeah.
But
can you understand why they'd want to go on record?
Do you know what? Yeah, I can. But people also need to realise every action has a consequence. Okay? And a lot of people, how do I word it? Sometimes people are very, very difficult to work with. And when it comes to the money, I really can't comment on that.
Do you feel you were fairly and reasonably compensated for your time in the band?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, do you know what? I think Dan had my back more than I give him credit for. And it's not, again, until John Kennedy passed away that I've been communicating with a few people, and I've just thought, wow, are we letting anger and hurt egos control what we're saying and how we're acting? I'd like to think I don't have an ego at all. I really don't. I'm not perfect, but don't have an ego, I don't think. But yeah.
You have incredible talent, though, and that's the point about you being a member of the band that is one of the heart and the soul. But I want to. You've mentioned John a couple of times now, and I read Danny's tribute to John, and I'm going to read part of it out to you. John is a great bassist and singer who filled in for Cradle at a time of such magical import, mayhem and mischief. Now, John actually recorded bass on the original Sin version of the Dusk and Her Embrace. Of course, God, I'm talking to you. We're a big part of it. Two versions, the one that was recorded beforehand, the Cocophonus version. Okay. What does he mean by filled in? Because my understanding is that he was a member of the group.
I can't comment. I don't think he was. I think he literally did fill in. I don't know what the relationship was, because, again, you've got to bear in mind, I'm 46. We're going back 30 odd years. I don't know. I believe that the relationship didn't end well. But then you've got a group of people, as I say, not just band, you've got outside influence as well. And people do like to stir the pot, if that makes sense. They do. I believe it didn't end well. I believe that however that ended carried on through Hecate and Throne's career. And I think that's unfair. Can we turn around and go, again, it was all one person's fault? No. I think the press had a part to play. Most definitely comparing the bands, comparing the voices, naming one band as a rip-off, But
didn't John
to
teach
my knowledge,
Danny? Sorry to interrupt, but there's so much stuff coming through, and I apologise if I do this, but it's just Didn't John teach Danny the Banshee Shriek? Is that true?
I've no clue. I can't comment on that. Again, if he did, fantastic. If he didn't, he didn't. I cannot give an opinion. All I know is that when I did the first album, as in my first recording, Danny was singing like that. John might have given him some advice. And Chinese whispers. Yeah. So it could have been John gave him a bit of advice. And then suddenly it's down years down the line, it's John taught Dan how to sing.
I'm trying to get to I was talking to John too. It's so sad because we were talking about doing this, and then it went really quiet. So I'm not even going to speculate on why he passed away, but I really hope he didn't suffer through that.
Well, obviously, it's all very fresh because it only happened the other day. I'm still in contact with a lot of people who are extremely, extremely heartbroken by it. And again, it's all very fresh. And his wife, I guess, will let people know. But yeah, hopefully he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, that rivalry with John and Danny, though, that in its own way, I understand is responsible for the reason why Cruelty ended up having the issues it did. Now, let me explain. I understand that Danny didn't want to use Andy Sneap, which some of the band members wanted to use because he'd worked with Hecate and Throne. I used to say Hecate and Throne, but Hecate and Throne.
I say Hecate and Throne, yeah.
And management didn't want Pete Tagtron. Now, they're the two most obvious people that I can't even begin to imagine what Cruelty would have sounded like with either Andy or Pete, but anyway. And Jan Peter Jenkel got the job, and he's done a little bit of work, but nowhere near what these other two guys had done up to that point. And we all know what happened next. And I've even gone as far as speaking to Chris from Thorion, who I know you know really well, about Jan, and he wasn't unfavorable. He wasn't unfavorable at all in his comments, and he gave me some other context around what he thought happened. But he certainly didn't say that Jan was hopeless and didn't know what he's doing. So, can you Do you remember that aspect? I mean, you were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I did about 24 hours, and I'm not talking about, like one day. I was singing for about 24 hours, not straight, but over a period of time. And I worked my arse off, right? And Dan was there for a lot of it. And he was very praising, very encouraging. And when the album was mixed, I was round Danny's house, and I think Dan was in the kitchen, and Tony put it on, and she played it, and I walked out halfway through, and I was upset. I was really, really upset. I was crying. I was so gutted. I'd been turned down so much that it sounded like I had my head in the toilet. It was horrible. And I was thinking, I didn't sing like that. The way my vocals were mixed was not that of a professional producer. I walked out, and I walked across the road, and Nick lived around the corner, and Nick had just come out of his flat, and we were crossing paths, and he went, "Have you heard the album?"
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "It's fucking bullshit."
He's devastated.
He was so angry, and I don't blame him. It sounded like typewriter. To me, that's how I describe his drums on that album, like a typewriter. And you know what? I thought, this is our hard work in the hands of someone who clearly didn't give a shit, did not understand the music. And that's with us forever. Okay? That album out there, it's there forever. I'd sit there and I'd try and play people bits. So this is me here. You've got to listen really, really hard. Don't breathe, because your breath might actually be louder than what you're hearing from me. It was just appalling. And I feel that one person was favoured on that album. And I was always led to believe that that one person was the one that was in control of how that album turned out. I don't know if I believe that. I believe that obviously there could be management, there could be, I don't know if record company played a part, but I do believe that there was someone else in that band that had a big part to play when it comes to the mix of that album. But I'm only surmising, I spent a long time blaming Dan, if I'm honest. A long time blaming Dan.
He blames Nick, though, and Nick's told me directly he did not want the drums to sound like that. But even as recently as a couple of months ago, there was something that was reported in Blabbermouth where he was talking about the album sounding that way because of Nick. So is it just a case of everybody's right, but everybody's got their own opinion on it, and that's the truth of the matter?
Could be. Of course, we're all going to have our opinions, but as I say, a lot of people won't admit the truth, and their part that they played during the recordings, during mixing, during tours. People have short memories. People have very, very short memories. Okay? I don't. I really, really don't. But yeah, you could be right in saying that. But if someone's very forceful in their personality and their body language, then those who aren't as strong, who are deemed weaker, they kind of buckle under the pressure. Does that make sense?
It does. And what's your view on the remistressing, Danny called it?
Haven't heard it. I don't want to hear it. It hurt a lot. It really did. It hurt a lot.
Do you think you should have been asked, though, given your contribution was, and you're right, it's buried. Do you think you should have been asked, what can we do here to bring your contribution forward and to be more prominent the way you intended?
If you talk about the right thing to do, There may be. But who am I to those much higher up? I'm a nobody. No matter what you say, no matter what fans say, I'm a nobody. Someone high up are going to go, do you know what? Let's talk to Sarah and see what she thinks. No one's going to do that. No one cares. It's hard. That is the harsh reality. No one gives a damn. It's about album sales, making money, and that's it. And I'm not saying that is the view of somebody else. You know, I don't think that always the artist has the freedom that they'd like to have and the say that they would like to have. Again, I don't know if it makes sense. I know what I'm trying to say. I think, you know, Dan wants the best for that band. I've never doubted otherwise. He wants that band to be successful and people are going to clash. I'd like to think that these days it's a hell of a lot calmer atmosphere, you know, that there's less or no bullying going on at all.
Can you understand why when Les left that he made a comment and said, what does Danny expect? Is he turning this, I'm paraphrasing, the band is now becoming Danny and the Filth. Can you identify with what he's saying at all or understand where he's coming from?
I think if you asked me 8 years ago how I feel, how I felt, I would agree. But again, I go back, they all had a part to play. And what came out of their mouths, they are responsible for. And their actions, they are responsible for. And the consequences. And this is not aimed at Les by any means. A lot of the people that we hail as heroes are very, very far from it. Musical heroes may be. But, you know, you read things like this person, they're great. Example. They love their wife, they love their family, they save cats, they're fantastic. They deserve this. And I think, I sit back and I think, oh my God, you really don't know this person at all. Because that's not how they act behind closed doors. I don't think, I've never, ever set out to hurt anybody, ever, ever. That's why I kept my mouth shut for so long. Yet I was called gobby, not to be trusted, big mouth. And yet it's really funny because I kept my mouth closed. And that's why a lot of them weren't exposed. Well, when I say exposed, like it's very easy for me to name a name to you and name times of how they treated me. I kept my mouth closed. That's why I was probably in cradle so long, because I allowed myself to be treated like crap. Moving away from something, I told somebody something yesterday that I'd never actually told anybody. There was an incident on the bus with someone where I was drunk. It was a festival and a person on that bus tried to get me to do stuff. And I've become a bit bitter about that. I pushed it to the back of my mind. And I think now, what a pig. Because I'm sure you have children. And if someone tried to do this, I don't know if they actually have a daughter. If someone tried to do this to your daughter, you'd go crazy. Why is it okay to do that to somebody else's daughter? Does that make sense? And I kept my mouth closed. I never told Dan. because I feel that if I'd have told Dan, I feel that, how can I put this? I don't think I would have stayed in Cradle, because I think Dan would have had to have made a choice between a backing singer and a music contributor. And I think it would have been a choice that he wouldn't have wanted to make, no matter how he felt about what I told him. Does this make sense? And I kept my mouth closed for so long. And I'm not going to name the person. And it wasn't, don't get me wrong, it wasn't horrendous, but it's how they viewed me and how they valued me. Yeah, and how they valued me. It was whacking. I remember it was whacking. Because, it's whacking. I'm positive. But yeah, how they viewed me, how they treated me, how they spoke to me. And then when I was drunk, decided, well, do you know what? I'll see how far I can push this. And again, I kept my mouth closed because all I wanted to do was sing. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be part of something, and I wanted to make something of myself, you know? So, yeah, some people aren't held accountable for their actions, and they go through their life never being held accountable for their actions. Don't know if any of that makes sense.
What was your relationship like with Paul Allender?
Yeah, it was all right. It was all right. Although, sadly, years down the line, I found out that a lot of the stuff that I blamed Danny for was actually him. So that's all I'll say with that. Amazing guitarist. We had some good times. I don't think he ever had my back.
I know you're good mates with, I'll ask the question, are you good mates with Lindsay?
Yeah, I am. She woke me up, as I put it.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
If you're going to ask, have we compared notes?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, we have. In detail, great detail. And
two very different eras, though. Yeah, and what you can divulge, is her story somewhat similar, or?
I said to her, if you had been in that band in the early days, you wouldn't have survived a second. I allowed myself to be treated like crap. I really did. If I'd have walked away, then although, you know, Covenant came on quite early and followed by Therion and Mortis, you're only as relevant as the band you're in, okay? Let's
so true.
Put it that way, okay? People forget what you contributed. If they can't name drop you because there's no band to back it up, you're not worth name dropping, you're not worth talking about. So to me, and it doesn't bother me at all, I'm not relevant. I do what I continue to do because I love it. But obviously my son comes first and family life. But Lindsay had tried to reach out to me a few times, and I openly said I didn't want anything to do with anybody in that band, even though most of the people weren't in there anymore. I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of emotional anger. I felt betrayed. I felt treated like crap. When I went, the only person that stayed in touch with me was Dave Pybus. You know, and we're still friends. But yeah, finally, you know, I got back to her and we talked. And let's just say we understood each other. And she helped me. She made me realise that I should be singing again. That's the best I can say. I mean, I don't know if Lindsay's done Scars and Guitars, but
I've spoken to her on when she was in the band, and of course, it's a different, very, very different conversation you have with someone when they're into when they're out. They're night and day, and What I can say to you is that I've heard through the grapevine that she's got a story to tell. Okay,
Oh, yeah, she does. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that because people close to it have told me, hey, you need to get Lindsay on, and I will, but you are, excuse the expression, but you are the biggest fish of them all. And I wanted to make sure that I had you on first.
I don't think, so with talking as a whole, I said, and I still stand by it, no one will ever tell you 100% of the truth because you just can't. Just like the situation I just described to you about what happened on the tour bus. I can't tell you who it was. I can't tell you how I feel about it now. The ill feeling I have towards that person, no one can ever tell you 100% of the truth. And also you have to admit there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of ill feeling, past members. And most of them, there might be one or two people talking to each other, but we're not all one big happy ex-Cradle of Filth family. There's still a lot of blame out there. But I don't think
are you
Lindsay
saying,
will tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, but that's why I like to. Richard told me point blank he wouldn't come on the show again, and I'd spoken to him when he was in Cradle of Filth, and he didn't hint at too much. He did a very. I'm not trying to throw these guys under the bus, but they didn't understand his relevance. This other podcast, but they had like a panel of people asking him questions, and they didn't have the depth of knowledge required to actually. He was trying to tell his story the same way you are, and they were trying to make light of it. There's nothing here to make light of. This is pretty serious stuff. And I felt like that was the opportunity there that was missed. So he's told me point blank, because I asked him and I said, do you want to come on the show and we'll talk about things? And the same situation is what I offer everybody, which is that it either goes out there in a way that you want it to go out there. It's not up to me. We share it the way you want it to be shared. But I just want to go back onto a point, if we've got a moment, just quickly. When you talk about the truth can't be told, are you saying that that's because of human nature or just the dynamic in Cradle of Filth?
Oh, I think human nature. People don't like the truth. But then is the truth opinion or fact? Okay? So how I tell my story is a mix of both. There is truth. I wouldn't lie. I've had to lie. I've had to lie so much. Loads of people have had to lie. And no matter where you are, you have to lie. You can never 100% tell the truth, whether you're at work or whatever. You go into a restaurant and you order some food and there's something in your food that's a bit dodgy. And you're like, what the hell is that? And then the waitress comes up and goes, how's your food? And you go, yeah, it was fantastic, thank you. You don't want to offend people, even though you've been offended. It's a mixture of both for me. A lot of mine was all truth, but a lot of emotion in there. And that's probably where I went wrong. See, I think Danny's got where he is because he's had to be a little bit ruthless. He started that band. It's his baby. I believe there's so many decisions he's had to make that he's not been happy to make. And I think there'd be the decisions that he's been probably pushed into where people have not agreed with him or, I don't know, we talk so much about Danny, but I'm kind of glad really because, again, we go back to John as well. Since John passing, it's made me reevaluate some things, of how, we're all dying, like, everyone in general,
Yeah.
You turn on the TV or you go on the internet and someone you admired or worked with has died and you think, I never got to say what I wanted to say. And to me, I feel after conversations that I've had, although I don't go back on anything I've said, I think emotion has made those words come out the way they shouldn't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think with Dan, he's a lot more, he's a lot more intelligent anyway. But Dan's very, very careful on what he says. Whereas me, I'm a bit more kind of, well, let's just go for it. Let's just tell the truth or say what I want to say and hope it doesn't bite me in the arse. People don't like to hear the truth. They want to think that everyone that they admire is fantastic and they go around saving cats, as I said, that there's not a bad bone in their body. But as I say, what they do behind closed doors is completely different to the image they portray in the press or to their fans, I say to you now that I really do believe now that Dan has had too much blame placed on him because it takes two to tango. It really does. Someone like that couldn't, he's a very intelligent guy. Very, very intelligent. I know now, after conversations that I've had throughout the years, that it's not all Dan. And I also believe that some of the things he's had to do has come across as nasty and ruthless and backstabbing. But knowing his personality, he was never the kind of guy to sit there and slag people off. Never. That wasn't his style. He was respectful to people and about people. Just unfortunately, the one thing that really did go against him was the drinking, which you all get pulled into, and the kickoffs that came with that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that went against him. He's a businessman, just like all the other people out there. Bands become businesses, don't they?
That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. And if people turn and go, "Oh, you only in it for the money," no, that's crap. You wouldn't go and work in McDonald's for free, would you?
What's a
You wouldn't go
juvenile
and become a doctor.
perspective? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a juvenile
Why
perspective.
not?
Yeah.
What is wrong with them making some money? But
Well, you want musicians to make money so that they can continue to make music. That's the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they
Yeah.
do go to a job at McDonald's or in the workshop or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got families to support. They've got bills to pay, just like everybody.
All right. Okay. So we've really discussed what I feel. I listened back. Okay. And I think we've got to the bottom of how you feel about everything. Okay. Which isn't so much mixed at all. I mean, you don't feel great about people's actions and the consequences of bullying either. And if you had your time over again, if you could go back and tell yourself when you were that 16-year-old and you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, take the emotion out of it and treat it like a business. And I think that's the difference. So when I attempted to go solo, which failed miserably until I met Danabella, who co-wrote oh God, my brain, The Corruption of Mercy.
Okay.
And other people contributed, of course. It wasn't until I started touring that I realised to try and make it a success, I had to be a little bit ruthless. And I had to make decisions that I didn't want to make, which might have come across harsh. And I put myself in other lead singers' shoes, whether it be Chris from Therion, whether it be Mortis, Danny, and there's some decisions I had to make that I didn't want to make. There's some kickoffs that I didn't want to have, that I had to have, Like, for example, when you turn up on the first day of tour, the shirts arrive a bit late and then it's 95%, 90% white. And the colour is so saturated, like, well, white, there's just white everywhere, that they're completely unsaleable. The print company go, oh, okay, looks nothing like the picture. Let's send it out anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and then you just have to kick off and then make a phone call to that company and a phone call to a manager. And why? You know, there seems to be a lot of common sense missing when you're running a band. And I learnt that. And then I put myself in those people's shoes. And I thought, sometimes we have to make choices that are going to be very unfavourable. And you have to take that chance. You just have to do it, go for it, and hope that it doesn't blow up in your face. So I saw things from a different perspective when I was doing my solo stuff. It didn't make me less angry, though. I've carried this anger for quite a long time because I see a few people succeeding that I don't believe should be succeeding because I know different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah. But let's talk about Chris. I like the guy. I've spoken to him a couple of times, more than that actually, and he's really impressed me. Chris from Thorion I'm talking about now, sorry, I should point out. He lives in Malta these days. He's an astute businessman. I know he's used to import cars, Russian-made four-wheel drives into Sweden. So
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, he's got such a he's just got high business acumen. There you go. But he's a nice fella too. Was that your impression?
Yeah. He obviously was a bit ruthless, a businessman, knows what he wants, and definitely an expert. You have to, again, bear in mind when I started Therion. See, okay, let's just go back really, really slightly. I have Cradle of Filth, or should I say the music I've done, and Danny to thank for me getting work. If Dan hadn't have taken me on, well, Dan and Paul, I wouldn't have had an example of what I was capable of to show other people. So when I you know, how all this happened with me working with Mortis and Therion was I met someone who was, what were they doing? I think they might have been in Dimmu Borgir for a short stint, and they put me in contact with Christopher. And because I'd heard Telly, I don't know how Chris wants to pronounce it, the correct saying.
Yeah, Telly, same thing. Yep. Whatever it is, we know the album. Great one.
Me and my friend Marcia, we were at a gig. It was, what was it? I don't know. Something. There used to be a guy called Mike who ran a place called the Devil's Church in London. And it's where a lot of the black metal bands used to play, and he was brilliant. We were around his place one night, and he put that album on, that Therion album, and we were listening, and Marcia said to me, wouldn't it be great if you could sing for this band? And I was like, hell yeah. This was full on operatic stuff, you know, to metal, which obviously I'd done this, but it was a different type of metal. And I thought, oh my God, it would be so cool to do this. And it sent me on that path to go looking for that band. And this person put me in contact, and I was in Sweden at the time. I don't know why I was there. I was staying at Heathen Doom Records in Stockholm, or the outskirts of Stockholm. And I think it was a girl called Petra who was running that store at the time. She put me in contact with Chris as well. And I hooked up with Chris, and I met Chris. We were walking around town. He showed me where the president got killed, which I found really, really boring. And I thought, oh my God, me and you are complete opposite ends of the spectrum. He was very mature and intelligent. I'm not saying I'm not intelligent. I've said this a lot, but he was very mature and very intelligent. Whereas I'm from London. I've spent a few years doing Cradle of Filth, where no one cares about how they treat each other. And I'm a lot more kind of open with my comments. And I thought, how the hell are we going to get on? And he gave me a chance. And to my knowledge, he told me I was the first singer he had ever employed that was not classically trained. Mm-hmm. And I was very impressed with that. I could sing that album. I could sing all of that. And do you know what? He was the best teacher. See, I've never had singing lessons, and that does show. I've never had singing lessons. I've never had training, but I would class Therion as my vocal training. Now, we did clash. It was all right for everyone to be smoking on the bus drinking, but one day he said to me, sopranos shouldn't be smoking and drinking, they should be going to bed. And I found that very sexist. And I ignored him. And I got, let's say, I don't want to use the term fired. I got fired for a while. Not you're fired. It was he stopped using me for a while. And then
he bought in Martina, didn't he? That's when that happened.
Yeah. And then our paths crossed. And he said to me, I want to give you another chance. And I'm like, oh, yes, brilliant, because I did like Therion. There was some things, they're guys. It was a very uncomfortable environment because they were nearly all of them just speaking Swedish. I'd be the only English person there and the only female on the bus, and you feel very small. But, I had a second chance, and I had some things said to me about how I had changed my work ethic. And two of them actually was said, you're fantastic. You're much better than so-and-so, and we want you to stay. And some of the best times of my life, hands down. He annoyed me at times, and I likely annoyed him, but it was a good union. It was a family, and it was some of the best times of my life. And I wish I could go back, but that's nostalgia, It wouldn't be the same. Johanna is sadly not with us anymore, and we desperately miss her. I'm still in contact with Suvi and the Neiman brothers, and there's a lot of us. There's not that much ill feeling. It's completely different. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're Swedish and they just don't care. But it was a nice environment. Just in the beginning, I did find it to be a little bit kind of, there's a rule, but it doesn't apply to you. But again, we were all young. It was amazing. It was amazing. I was treated fairly. Everything was just how I think it should have been. A few glitches here and there, but again, none of us are perfect. But I do miss him. I would love to say, I'd love to hook up with him one day, but I don't think that's going to happen because he's somewhere else now. So, but totally, hands down, didn't always appreciate things like we do as humans, but yeah, some of the best times of my life. And he's very focused. I think he's very professional, but he's a businessman. And he has to make businessman decisions to succeed, Yeah,
and did you know Martina at all?
Oh, yeah, me and Martina are still in contact.
Oh, great.
Still in contact. She had come to a few of my shows, wherever I'd been, like solo shows or whatever. Yeah, she's okay. She's good. She's very good. But still in contact with her, yeah, absolutely.
And you were on one of my favorite albums from that era, Stargate, with Mortis.
Yeah. Well, so that same meeting when I was in Stockholm, staying at Heathen Doom Records, when I met, and actually it's the weekend that Diana was killed, because I phoned up Marcia. Yeah, I phoned up Marcia, and I was like, so Marcia is just so you know, Nick Barker's ex-wife. But obviously I knew her we all knew each other, you know, because Marcia was in a relationship with somebody else years and years prior to that. So that's how, when I say Marcia, just, you know, she was kind of like a fixture of the band as well, you know. But I phoned her and she told me about Princess Diana, and it was that week, obviously very shocking, but it was that weekend, and I met Mortis as well. They put me in contact. I think Petra did it as well. Put me in contact with Mortis because she knew a lot of people, and I had a phone call with him, and I wanted him to sign some of my music, and it ended up being that I ended up working for him. So yeah, I was very, very lucky, very lucky. And again, I have Cradle of Filth, as in the music, the chance that I was given, and Danny, to thank for that. He provided the stepping stone for me to have some proper professional music out there to show people, and as an example. So, you know. So
Yeah,
what's Mortis like? Have you interviewed him yet?
I have. I like him. He's a good bloke, yeah.
Yeah, he's lovely. He's lovely.
Do you call him Mortis or Havard? Havard, I think it is.
I call him Mr. M or Mr. H.
Okay, there you go. Easy way
Or
around
pain in
it.
the arse because he doesn't pick up the phone much. But yeah.
Have you spoken to him about his deal with Earache and what he thinks of that? Did he go into any detail with that with you?
I know things from the past, but no. I mean, I know. So I was engaged to a guy who was in Lawnmower Death and Acid Rain.
Oh yeah,
I was engaged to him, and we were together for 9 years. Actually, we met on the Therion Moonspell tour, and so we were together for 9 years. So I had been told a few things, nothing major, but I'd been given the impression that, from speaking to him and other people, lots of other people, that it wasn't the best label. And me and Mr. H or Mr. M had conversations, but again, it's their private business. And I have always felt, and I've always said to him, you're nowhere near as famous as I think you should be. And I think he's never been taken seriously. Now I think he's doing so much better.
It's close to it now. Yeah, I agree with you, by the way. Yeah.
But he deserves all the success in the world. And for example, today I'm supposed to be doing some stuff for him, but I favoured you. So I'll send him a message.
I'm flattered. Thank you.
I can't do it now anyway because my son's home, but it's only a small thing. And you know, he turned around to me and said, oh, you know, do you have time to do this thing for me? It's only small, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And he sent me the track, and I've said to him, you should know that if you say do one thing, I'm going to listen to the whole thing, and there's something that's going to jump out of me. And instead of getting half hour out of me, you're going to end up with something like 8 hours out of me. And I'll happily do that for him because I like him. I respect him. We do things a bit differently. I've let him down a bit in the past, which I deeply regret. And some people would probably understand this. I was supposed to do some tours for him. And I can't remember the first one. I backed out of one and I went AWOL and I didn't contact him. And I deeply regret doing it that way. And it wasn't until my brother-in-law said to me, oh, do you think that was fair? And I'm like, oh, well, no, actually. He's like, well, why don't you just contact him and be honest and tell him? And I thought, sometimes being honest is really, really difficult. And I was wrong and I shouldn't have. And I let him down. And then I did it again. I let him down on the Mayhem tour. And it's going to sound really stupid to a lot of people. I have my son to put first. And because I haven't travelled for a long time, I became a bit paranoid about travelling and what if something happens to me?
Oh, it's understandable. Yeah.
Who's my son going to have? You know? Unfortunately, my husband lost both his parents at an early age. Very traumatic when he lost his mum. He was a young boy. And I think about things like that. And I think about him having no one. And that's what made me make these decisions. I've been offered tours. I've been offered shows. There's a tour, potentially, maybe. I'm not going to say what band it is, just in case it falls through. British band who potentially have a tour in South America. And they've sent me messages. Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? And I'm like, I really want to, but I don't want to do the travelling. So, yeah. So going back to Mortis, I owe him, really, because he's taken chances on me lately and I've let him down and it was never intentional. I think he understood in the end, you know, but, yeah.
What about Jamie? So, I know Jamie, of course, and or Jay. And Demu, I can't imagine that your career trajectory didn't intersect with Demu's at some point. So was there ever an opportunity there?
Oh, I wish there was. So we did the Rape and Ruin of Europe in 1997, and in that was like a 6-day festival. And it was Cradle of Filth, Dissection, In Flames, and Dimmu Borgir. Was it? Yeah, it was. Yeah. And some relationships were formed, some friendships were formed. And again, I was young. It was my very first tour. I was the only woman on the tour. Well, woman, I say girl. Very inexperienced, very hard to fit in. But I did with some of these people. And I've formed some friendships. Like I stayed in contact with Yun from Dissection. And I stayed in contact with some of the guys from Dimmu and In Flames. And they were friendships that, that continued for a long, long time. And listening to Dimmu's music, I'd been out to visit them. I'd stayed with Shagrath, Stian. I'd stayed with Sven, had brilliant times. My God, just fantastic times. I would have loved to have said, please, can I do something for you? I would have begged. I never did beg, but that's one band I would love to have sung for, even just a small amount. And it's funny, I haven't seen Stian for a very, very long time. In fact, there was a moment where I didn't talk to them much and something had happened. And I don't know if it was the Dimmu Cradle of Filth rivalry, because I'm sure that's well in the past and that's nothing that was created by the bands. That was press, putting them up against each other.
Bullshit. Yeah.
And I'd been at the same festival at Dimmu and I hadn't spoken to Stian and Sven. And then I kind of was like, oh my God, what am I doing? What an idiot. Why am I not talking to these guys? They're fantastic. Lovely, lovely people. And recently, Shagrath added me on his music profile on Instagram. And it made me feel really good because I thought, he's obviously thought about me, which is nice. Don't know in what way, but it was nice. And we haven't spoken, but I've got very good memories of him, of the entire band. And I'm grateful for those memories. They never wronged me in any way. They treated me with respect. And obviously from that tour, I remember Stian, as in Nagash, coming up to me during sound check and said, you're Sarah, aren't you? From Cradle of Filth. And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come and sing for us for Covenant? Now, obviously, this is a whole different bag, a whole new can of worms. But we were all young, and I took him up on the offer. And obviously, I remained in contact with him and with Jamie. Jamie, as I've said, he is a sweetheart. He was just so good at what he does. And
Brilliant.
He was one of those, he leaves Australia, he goes to Norway, he takes chances. I don't think he had the best ride, I know what I see, what I saw, and I'm not implying any kind of bad treatment, but I feel just what I feel. He wasn't supported enough to keep that dream alive in Norway. That's just my view. It must have been very difficult for him being in another country. It must have been.
I couldn't imagine how difficult as an Aussie. I couldn't imagine, and even back then, I was 17 or 18 back then, and he's about my age, and I just could not imagine when he told me his story, sleeping in the rail yard and stuff. I mean, people wouldn't. It's not like us Anglo-Celtic types who sort of let people in. He's saying that they wouldn't even offer him a place to sleep.
So, okay, I don't know what he's told you because, again, I haven't listened. The only one I listened to was Nick Barker, and I think I might have listened to a little bit of Stuart. I can't remember, but I haven't listened to anybody. Any of what they said to you.
Have a listen to the Jamie one. You'd be intrigued by that because he even got treated like shit when he came back here because we've got that god awful tall poppy thing in Australia where I remember just thinking he was a hero. The guy was a national hero. He should have been given a bloody OAM when he came back for doing what he did. But I mean, I didn't even know he was back until he appeared in the Street Press, the Drum Media, or Time Off. One of those two was.
As I said, you're only as relevant as the band you're in.
Yeah, well, you're so right. You hit the nail on the head with the hammer on that point. Yeah, but he's whatever happened, but he's certainly. But you guys clearly connected. You were mates fairly quickly. You're fast friends.
Well, I mean, I can't. With any relationship that you have with a musician, we all have one face for one person and another face for somebody else, and that's not implying that everyone's two-faced. At all. But I saw Jamie, would be in Elm Street and he would come out drunk. I don't know how he could afford to be drunk, how anyone can afford to be drunk in that country. But obviously it's a lot worse now, as in price-wise. But he'd come out, he'd be drunk and he'd be hungry. And we used to take the piss out of him for going down the bins and pulling out a kebab.
Oh, shit, yeah.
But clearly, amongst all the laughter, underneath all of that, he was hungry.
He's a survivor too.
He did. We've all got our story of why we did things, of what you tolerate to live your passion, to live your dreams. With me, I let people treat me like absolute crap. Jamie ate out of bins and slept where he slept and, But then, we could sit here and we can tell you all these stories and then you'll have one person go, oh, just whining, just moaning, get over it. It was years ago.
Yeah, they do that. I know, but they can fuck off. Excuse my language of the young fellas listening. But I get fed up with it. I've even lately, I've been doing this now 7 or 8 years or what have you. It's only recently that I've started reacting and responding to some of those the peanut gallery comments, if you like. Now I just remove their visibility on YouTube or what have you. But for a moment there, I was actively, fighting against some of the comments that I saw there that were just stupid, just dumb comments, rooted in ignorance.
You will get put down and belittled over the smallest thing. Okay, I'll chuck this in now because I think it's relevant to how people get treated on their appearance. So if we go back to when I started Cradle of Filth, I was one of the very few women in extreme metal. Okay. Sarkana, is that her name? Sarkana from Gehenna. She was there. I guess I just can't think. The Amanda Gallus. Okay, but that's not metal. There's very few women that were involved in that extreme music. Obviously, there was death metal ladies out there as well. And then you take a band who are extreme metal, black metal, and you add an operatic backing singer. So that was Danny's classical influence, you know, I'm guessing. Movie soundtracks, his love for scores.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. It worked. I don't know whose idea it was. I would say it was Dan's idea. It worked. And then you take a girl who is not only doing operatic vocals, but she's not skinny. Okay? I am, I don't know. Most of the girls on the scene are probably, I don't know how your sizing goes, size 8, size 10.
Same. Yeah, exactly the same.
I come in at a size 16 and I'm slagged off to the core on some of the websites. Not to the fans, though. The fans were brilliant. And the stuff that gets said about me is pretty horrendous. And it never held me back. It never stopped me from getting in that corset and playing that part. And I did it despite some of the crap that was said about me. And then would have the other side of getting to the corset. That must mean she's a slag. She's this, she's that, you know. On the first Cradle tour, because I was one of the very few people who talked to fans and mingled with bands, I was called a whore, a band whore, a slut. I spent the last few weeks of that tour drunk on stage because it was the only way I could get through from the things I was being called, the belittling in front of people. And I stuck with it. And I continued. And I listened to the comments and it didn't beat me down. It hurt. When I got off that tour, I was very, very depressed. No one will ever understand what I was feeling at the end of that tour. I was with a bunch of guys who I thought gave a shit, who I thought valued me. And day by day by day, I was picked at.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we talk about Jamie's this Australian guy that rocks up and he's got long ginger hair. Loads of people get picked on for having ginger hair.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you look like. Oh, Dan, his height. You know?
Yeah.
It's only women, though, that get slagged off for their weight. Let's point that out. It's very rare that men get slagged off and belittled and ripped apart for their weight. It's always women. But, yeah, Jamie comes along, long ginger hair, doesn't look black metal in the slightest. He must have faced some barriers, you know. People can be very, very cruel, and it's whether we choose to let them beat us down, you know. And some of them did succeed in beating us down, but then we also get back up again. And Lindsay is one of the people I've got to thank for that. You know, there's a few other people, Chris Wren, one of my friends in Sweden, Matthias, he used to play in Hypocrisy. Charles Hedger, you know, who's now in Mayhem.
Yep.
Loads of people, after I started talking to Lindsay, a load of people come back and like, no, you are worth something. Don't be put down. Don't allow them to win. But obviously I was living on past experiences. The scene's changed a hell of a lot now, I think. I don't think people can get away with all the sexism now, can they?
No, they can't, and it has changed. There's, you know, gosh, politics is another matter, but yeah, in that aspect, People, that was always the issue. It's metal is the one genre where you're free to be who you are.
Yeah, that's what I thought, actually.
Yeah, but this conversation is changing my view certainly on how you were, based on how you were treated back then, about metal being an open and accepting culture, because I always thought that it was. But just on the image side of things again.
I was an easy target because I was a young female who had no one to back me up.
Yeah,
so
you had no one in your corner.
And there
band.
have been a lot of targets. If you show any kind of weakness, you suddenly become a target. If your voice isn't as loud as the next person, you are then that target. You'll get bullied into doing stuff that you don't want to do, which is why, just my opinion, I think, as what has happened with Dan sometimes, that's what I think now. But, he could say I'm wrong. Not that we talk, really, but he could say that I'm wrong. But just when you've got so many... I don't think
he can say you're wrong about what you've been talking about. It's not his place to tell you.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would. I mean,
Sorry, when I say Dan, I don't think it's anybody's place, by the way, to tell you that you're wrong. You're talking about your experience.
If people do listen to this, there'll be a few feathers that I'm going to ruffle, because I can hear them now. Stupid fucking bitch, don't know what she's fucking talking about. And that's exactly what I'll get. But that's fine. I'm happy in my life. I've got my son, I've got my husband, I've got my 2 cats who like to chuck up fur balls. I'm still singing. I don't care about being famous. I care about the fan base that I've got, and that's it,
We talked a little bit about Faye, but I want to talk in a bit more detail, if that's cool. Okay, so you're having this bloody awful experience. Did she help at all? Could she? I mean, she's a very smart lady. I know that. Okay. Kit's a brilliant producer. These were 2 very sharp people. But at any point, did she sit you down, pull you aside and say, I see what's going on here. How can I help? That kind of...
No, because I'm not a band member. I'm not a contracted band member. I am session. I am not her priority.
Hang on, just on that point. It. So your view is that because you weren't a contracted or a tenured member of the group, okay, you fall outside the circle of interest. You can be replaced.
Yes, that's exactly it. A human resource. That's exactly what I am. I can be replaced. See, how people higher up viewed my worth is completely different to how fans viewed my worth.
Mm-hmm. Clearly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's really just it. That's it. I'm an expense that they're paying for, and it would be easier to get someone in cheaper who didn't speak up for themselves and moan as much about how they're being treated. It's just easy. Get rid of me.
So effectively bring in a doormat. But who wants to play that role in a band and be treated like
Loads
shit?
of people. Put out an advert for a backing singer right now to join Cradle of Filth, and you'll get about 1,000 women come forward. But it's different now, I think. I believe now that the band is very respectful. But okay, put out that advert, 25 years ago?
Yeah, 1996,
yeah. There'll be loads of women, and they... okay, some people are going to think this is out of order to say. They're not just going to be picked on their voice, they're going to be picked on how fuckable she is. How fuckable she is to the public eye, and if certain people can sort of like have a go, There's very few people in the beginning that treated me like a woman, and I go back and say that front man always treated me with dignity and respect. Might have failed in other areas, like making me feel like I was valued. But then someone could go, oh, shut up. Would you want to cuddle?
But Faye held the balance of power. Or maybe, so I'm talking about it as a 45-year-old.
Faye's a businesswoman.
Forgive me there, but I understand.
She's a businesswoman.
But she's still a human being. And if you see somebody suffering, isn't it the logical thing to do is to seek to understand about how you can alleviate that suffering? Or do you think she was oblivious?
Hassle.
Actually, here's the question for you. Did she know that you were suffering?
No. Oh, yes. Yeah, but she probably didn't view it as suffering. She probably just viewed it as me moaning. That's what a lot of people viewed it as. Stop fucking complaining. You're lucky to be here. You know? It wasn't,
What would you say to her now?
Oh, I miss her, actually. I miss Faye. I understood what position she was in, that she's being hired by a band to do a job, and if there's any problems, she has to eliminate those problems. Not saying like eliminate, like shoot them or anything. That's her job.
Yeah.
But my problem has always been the lack of emotion and empathy and understanding. Like mental health, we put a massive deal on mental health now. There was zero shits given towards people's mental health. Zero. Again, you were just a hassle if you were having a bad moment, I think she did see, I'd had phone calls, we'd discussed stuff, but it's literally like this. And this could be her view, but I'm not saying this is solely her view. If you don't like it, you know what you can do.
Yeah, the non-option.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Deal with it, shut up, or F off. And that is as blunt as I can be, and that's exactly how it is. I chose to stay in these situations, okay, because I wanted to sing. It's what you do. You put up with stuff. But then there came a point where I was getting very annoyed with all the sniping and, there was just so much going on.
You're getting older.
Towards 2008 when we parted ways. There was so much going on and it became a bit violent on my part, because I was just sick and tired of certain things going on stage and backstage, and other people were just sitting in the corner making their comments known when someone was out of the room, and I thought, I'm not like this. I've got to do something, session or not. And it ended up in a few situations where I hit someone. And I kind of regret that. But at the time I felt there was no getting through. And then that person would hit me back. Not anything major, don't get me wrong, just anger. And then the drink was involved. And I was like, just had enough. And I met someone and I made the choice to walk away. But at the same time, I think someone had enough that I was fighting back, and my voice was very big at that point. Mm-hmm. I was no longer the person that cowered.
Member of the band, yeah.
Well, not to them, never to them, and that's fine. But yeah, I think this person had enough, and it was just easier to expel me from the band, So it was, I think someone had enough and I'd had enough, and boom, 2008 went, and lucky for me, I, was paid off, which was fantastic. So I didn't lose anything, and I up and went, and I was really happy. I was a bit gutted in a way, but what hurt me even more, that although there was situations and problems, I was very hurt that someone never contacted me. And I won't say who it is, but I was very upset. And you know, I've made that clear, I think, in a few places, but, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I was an expense. I was supposed turning out to be a hindrance, because if I'd have acted like I did in 2008, 1997, well, you know, I had one person threatening to put me to bed, literally to put me to bed, to get me to shut up. And if I didn't shut up, there would be consequences, because I was defending myself. And it's defending myself that got me into a lot of trouble, and why I was being called gobby and mouthy, because no one likes a woman who defends themselves. Well, when I say no one, the abusers, as I put it, don't like women who stand up for themselves and have an opinion.
What was your relationship like with James McIlroy?
Oh, bless him. Lovely guy. I love James. But with all of us, our personalities changed. Our personalities did change. James changed. I changed. I became very offensive. I didn't mean to be. I lost a few friends because of that, because you have to have balls. You have to be able, you know, I can't explain it. The stuff that comes out of your mouth would get you fired from a job and likely arrested.
Yeah.
And you have to join that. A lot of people can go, well, you don't have to be like that. You can still be yourself. No, you didn't. The stuff that was coming out of our mouths, wow. But James changed as well. He did. It was never nasty. Don't get me wrong, but his attitude changed. Charles changed. Martin Powell changed. We all went from kind, caring people to we were all up against each other. No one gave a shit about anyone's feelings. We didn't care. We stopped caring. And that's what I think also went wrong. No one cares. You can't have feelings on tour. You can't have feelings in a band. So, you know.
Were there ever any moments you broke down and you thought, oh, you might be in the middle of Belgium, for example, just picking a country, think, I can't do this anymore?
Oh, yeah, quite a lot. Quite a lot. I know quite a lot. You know, for example, from the very first tour, you know, there was another situation where we just got to a venue, and this is the one that Faye came out to, and one of the crew who was having a bad morning literally just went ape at me, started chucking chairs and swearing at me and threatening me. And all I'd done was come into the venue and sat down on one of the chairs. And everyone would have heard it. Humiliating, absolutely humiliating. But a blind eye was turned, because we're there to do music and do a job. And if I'd complained, very, very few would have had my back. And that would have been it. They would have had to have turned a blind eye. We're there to tour. And I'm trying to establish myself and do what I love. So I keep my mouth shut and I deal with it my way. And on that tour, my way was drinking. It was drinking.
So there's that aspect. There's that aspect. But I'm just going to show some empathy here, because I can totally understand how you could become violent in the situation that you're in there, because you're hostage to it. You're in foreign, far-flung places. You're away from home, well outside of your comfort zone. And I know within my own life, when I've threatened violence and sometimes even visited violence on people, they've stopped doing the fucking around. Sorry, excuse my language, but you know what I mean.
Right.
They stop it. They stop it. So, but I know you've got to step into that thing within yourself where you when you threaten violence, you know you're going to visit it upon somebody, and your energy changes, your aura shifts, and they know as well. So, in a way, and I hope I frame this appropriately, to survive, and that's the point, to survive, you had to adopt these violent characteristics. And, of course, alcohol does go hand in hand with these things because you were numbing yourself.
So, on that tour, oh, God, it makes me feel sick even just thinking about it, right? It always has. We had a day off in Italy and the band spent the whole day in a pawn shop. I can say it because, okay, we spent the whole day. Now, I had a choice to walk around Italy on my own with no one by my side, not knowing where I was, and be with nobody, or go to that shop. And the stuff that was on the TVs, it made me feel I'll never forget, it made me feel physically sick. Right? Oh, let me just clarify. It wasn't anything dodgy like underage, okay? Or so no one gets the wrong impression, or animals or anything.
Yeah.
Like it just hours and hours and hours of stuff. Even this old woman, I'll never forget this. The old woman, and her nose was bleeding in the video. And I had a choice, stay or go. I had to stay. It was uncomfortable. It was horrible. And people can laugh. It was horrible. You know, I was put in quite a few situations. And again, not by the person we all assume is the bad person. You know? But that's just what you do. You have to do stuff sometimes that you don't want to do, that you're not comfortable with. Probably not so much now. I'd like to think, I mean, God, there's women everywhere on the scene, isn't there? It's completely different.
Yeah, it's about half and half.
Back then it wasn't. You know, it really, really wasn't. The amount of guys from bands that have approached me for one thing, people that I've got all their albums, you know, behind me.
Yeah.
Just the amount, just how you're viewed. You can't be a musician. You can't be a serious musician. You're along for the ride. So spread them, you know, literally.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't let anyone speak to their children like that, or their mums or their sisters, would they? But it's all right when you're on the road.
When I was at boarding school, bullying was so bad, I didn't notice it. Can you relate to that?
No. I think it's something that children do. Okay? It's not something that adults should be doing. Fully grown adults. They know full well what's coming out of their mouth. When you're standing there in front of someone's face, screaming at them, shouting at them, or asking them to do something like what I spoke about earlier, they're thinking about this. They know what they're doing. None of these people had mental health issues. They knew what they were doing.
They're self-aware, and you're aware of what they're doing.
Yeah, they're fully aware. And did it become the norm? Well, yeah, it did kind of become normal, and it was accepted only because some people, I think, were too afraid to speak up. You know, you've got a band that have got so much talent. Every single one, I think everyone that's walked through that door has got so much talent. But with that talent comes personalities that are going to clash we've all been raised differently. Some have had some very, very bad upbringings. Some have had it quite nice. I didn't have the best upbringing. I've made that known, not going into too much detail.
Mm-hmm.
You know when you're being evil to someone. You know when you're breaking them. And you've got a choice then to continue breaking them or stop. And a few people didn't stop. So
it sounds like Lord of the Flies.
Hmm.
What do you think happened with Annabelle? Because she wasn't there for long, about a year and a half or so, or thereabouts.
I've heard things, but I can't comment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you're in a big band and sometimes decisions have to be made that you're not comfortable making. But maybe some people advise that it's the best move to make. And then you're the one that's going to get the blame for making that decision. Does that make sense? All I know is that she's got a phenomenal voice. She is very confident. She's not afraid. And some people, I think, don't like that. Don't know.
How has Martin survived so long, or Marthus?
I don't know. Don't talk to him. I don't have anything. When I think he's all right. I don't know. Maybe he is the next one in charge. Maybe. I mean, I know that when he started Cradle of Filth, he wasn't taken seriously. The amount of times he would get upset from the things that were said to him.
Danny you're talking about, or Martin?
No, Martin.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I remember one comment that was made that was, oh, he's from a third world country. He should be happy with getting the money that he's getting. You know?
I'd wondered if that was a strategy, actually. You know, that thought had crossed my mind, what you just said there.
Yeah. He was treated, I'd upset him a few times with some comments because, as I told you, you join in. You come out with stuff that you think, oh my God, that was actually really bloody rude. And you don't mean to do it. You think you're funny at the time, you know. I have heard he's changed a lot. But that's, again, I can't say anything. Paul's not in the band anymore. Maybe he's taken the same kind of position as Paul. I don't know. I don't know. I wish him well. I hope he's all right. But I don't have anything to do with him. I don't really have anything to do with the band.
So you don't know Zoe either?
I know Zoe, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. So, yeah. Just, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Did you know Rosie?
You hear things. I say you hear things, and you think, okay, well, I can't be. I don't want part of it now.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah,
the more people that are passing away, the more you think, God,
I know.
The Chinese whispers. Is it all worth it? I can't. I've changed my view in some areas, and other areas I can't forgive at all. So,
What were your thoughts on Dave Hirshheimer? So there was who I've spoken to as well. So there was a period of time when there was about 4 drummers involved in a 12-month period.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what was going on there? Was it a case of, I know I've spoken to Woz, seems like a fantastic guy. Just basically said the gig's not for him. He didn't want to do it, but I think Danny wanted him in the band because he was the first Cradle of Filth drummer.
Yeah.
Then Dave Hirshheimer's gone on, and I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag there, but has gone on to an enormous career elsewhere. And then there's Adrian. And there might have been one or two others around the traps too. I don't know. But, can you cast your memory back to, that August 1999 period where it seemed to be...
An amazing guy. Amazing guy. I think he was left on his own quite a bit. He was thrown in at the deep end. Let's face it. I think he had a warm-up show in Holland, and then we had Dynamo, and he made mistakes. All I know is that he made mistakes and he was judged for it. That's all I know. I heard some comments.
About Adrian, right?
No, we're talking about Dave.
Oh, Dave. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty damn sure I'm sure it was Dynamo, because I know it was the biggest gig. It was massive, and it was Dave's first gig. As in second gig, we had a warm up, and then
it's a hell of a way to be introduced to the band. Yeah.
Bloody hell, yeah. It was Dynamo was massive. Oh, I don't know how many thousands, but I don't know, 80,000. I don't know what it was, but I remember walking out on that stage with my head in the air because I didn't want to look at the audience, and I put my head down. I had a bowel movement. I'm like, bloody hell, massive, massive. But I know that he was judged for that, for the mistakes that he made. And from what I understand, he wasn't judged by the common denominator. It was elsewhere within the band. And I believe that's where it ended. He's a brilliant guy, lovely guy, I haven't spoken to him in a while. Oh, flipping hell, yeah. Then Adrian came along, and Adrian, I love Adrian, He was a prankster, pain in the butt prankster. Remember one time he took my DVD and he stuck it in the microwave and he microwaved it, which I wasn't very happy about. He wasn't very good at having jokes played back on him, but he was amazing. He was good to talk to. He was kind. And I miss him and his wife. But everyone became victims of the backstabbing and, the politics, the drama.
Yeah,
I was gutted when he went. I was, really, really gutted when Adrian left. I think it was a sad, sad day when he went, and Martin Powell, God. Yeah.
Yeah. What, Rosie Smith, did you have anything to do with her?
Yeah. Still talk to her a little tiny bit. We were cool, no issues there. But again, little things would be said, and
there is a coalition of ex-members that are friendly with each other, though. So
but only a small amount. It's like it's not a massive group. There's, for example,
Dave,
for
Rosie,
one person will speak to. There's probably 2 or 3 for every one person. There's literally. So I guess some of it's because paths haven't crossed, people haven't stayed in contact, or there's just a lot of ill feeling. As an example, me and Charles used to be really, really close,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'd get the you two are doing this and blah. So that's where it starts.
Yeah,
it's where it starts, and then some lies were told concerning me and another couple, and so the knife was put in there, and then that ended up being okay. But once any kind of friendship is tarnished, that's it. It's hard to go back. And Charles left, and Charles' attitude had totally changed. He had this very don't give a damn about anything, and there was no longer that connection anymore. But it's funny, he knows this. So like I started having these dreams, and I had a few dreams about him, and I thought, oh my God, I miss you so much. Literally, we were friends, and then suddenly it all became so complicated and nasty, and we weren't friends. And I reached out to him and I just said, I miss you. I really miss you. And I just said, you know, I've been wanting to contact you for ages. And he wrote back, why didn't you? And we just started from there.